What is it like to be a world-renowned cybercriminal, and what motivates them? Today's guest, referred to as the original Internet Godfather, shares his experiences running a cybercriminal empire, going on the run, and ultimately turning his life around. Brett Johnson was responsible for refining modern financial cybercrime as we know it today. After being placed on the United States Most Wanted list, captured and convicted of 39 felonies, Brett promptly escaped prison. Captured again, Brett served his time, accepted responsibility, and found redemption through his loved ones and the help of the FBI. Today, he is considered a leading authority on internet crime, identity theft, and cybersecurity. Brett speaks and consults around the world to help protect people and organizations from the type of person he used to be. I'm your host, Chris Parker, and this is the Easy Prey Podcast. Brett, thank you so much for coming on the Easy Prey Podcast today.
Chris, I appreciate it. I really do. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. So you've been referred to as the original Internet Godfather. There's like, I see you rolling your eyes already, but there's got to be a great story behind it. Can you tell your story?
Sure. I guess the best way to start with that is, how did I get that title, right? So that title comes from me being convicted of 39 felonies. I was placed on the United States Most Wanted list. I escaped from prison. And what really got me the title, I built the first organized cybercrime community. It was called Shadow Crew. It was a precursor to today's darknet and darknet markets. It laid the foundation for the way modern cybercrime or financial cybercrime channels still operate today. Of course, I went to prison, and rightfully so. If anyone ever needed a stint in prison, it's Brett Johnson. I'll tell you that one.
That sounds like a good promotion for prison.
Right? Come on down. It'll help you out.
So what was it that your organization was doing?
So Shadow Crew, if you look at organized cybercrime, whether we're talking about credit card theft, phishing, account takeover, tax return identity theft, any number of things like that, before Shadow Crew, there's actually 3 sites. There's Shadow Crew, Carter Planet, and Counterfeit Library. So I ran both Counterfeit Library and Shadow Crew. Before the advent of those sites, the third site, Carter Planet, was ran by Dmitry Golubov. He was a Ukrainian, went by the screen name of Script. Nowadays, he's a member of parliament. I know he's running for mayor in Odessa this year. So I don't know whether he'll get it or not. Who knows? But before the advent of those 3 sites, if you were looking at engaging in any type of cybercrime, the only avenue you really had was an IRC chat session. So you'd go there and, you'd have a rolling chat board. You didn't have any idea who you were talking to, if you could trust them, if they were a criminal, if they were a cop, if they had an item or a service for sale, if it worked, or if they were just trying to steal your money. So what Counterfeit Library and Shadow Crew did, they provided a trust mechanism that criminals could use. Now you had a large communication channel that's forum type structure where someone in different time zones, they could reference conversations days, weeks, months old. You knew by looking at someone's screen name what the skill level of that person was, if you could trust that person, if you could learn from that person, or if you could network with that person. Because if you look at the necessities of cybercrime, there are 3 things that have to work in conjunction for cybercrime to be successful. It's gathering data, committing the crime, and then cashing out. So all 3 things have to work together. If they don't, the crime fails. Why even try? What you see time and time again is the problem with that is that one specific criminal cannot do all 3 things. He's good in one area, sometimes 2, rarely all 3. And that's why, again, these forums, these marketplaces exist today. They allow that one specific criminal who is not good in one area to network with other criminals who are good in those areas. And that's typically what we see time and time and time again. So that's what Shadow Crew, that's what Counterfeit Library did. Shadow Crew makes the front cover of Forbes, August of 2004. October 26, 2004, United States Secret Service arrests 33 people, 6 countries, 6 hours, and I am the only guy publicly at that point mentioned of getting away. They picked me up February 8th, 2005, and they gave me a job, the Secret Service did. And I am that idiot that continued to break the law from inside Secret Service offices for the next 10 months. Until they finally found out about it At which point I go on a cross-country crime spree, steal $600,000 in about 4 months. Wake up one morning the night before I'd stolen $160,000 out of ATMs. Wake up the next morning, signed on to cartersmarket.com, which was ran by a friend of mine named Max Butler. There is my name, U.S. Most Wanted, beside of it. So me being the idiot that I am, what do you do, Brett? You've just made the United States Most Wanted list. Well, let's go to Disney World. And that's exactly what I did. So, yeah.
Well, that's challenging. So,
oh, yeah.
How did they catch you at Disney World? Would they catch you on a camera or airport? Like
Triggerfish.
Triggerfish?
Triggerfish. So nowadays it's called Stingray. Back then it was called Triggerfish. So Stingray is actually the next generation of the Triggerfish device.
So for the audience, can you explain what a Stingray device is?
Sure, it is a device which spoofs a cell phone tower. It can actually locate your cell phone within back then, it may be closer now, but back then it could locate your cell phone within a 7-foot radius. And not only your cell phone, but all the other cell phones in that area. So they can do any number of things. And the federal government likes to keep that so secret that they will dismiss charges against you if you start to try to bring it up in court. So that's what happens. An associate of mine, Daniel Rigmaiden, he was convicted. Well, he was arrested for tax return identity theft. I'm the guy that started that whole thing. So everyone's tax returns that's delayed every single year. I am that son of a bitch that started that stuff. Taught Daniel Rigmaiden how to do it, set him up with the Secret Service so they could arrest him. He ends up spending, I think it was 3 or 5 years in a county jail defending himself. He files over 1,000 FOIA requests.
My goodness.
Yeah.
That's busy.
One of the requests happened to mention something about a device spoofing cell phone towers. At that point, he was like, I want to know about this. Prosecutor comes in and says, hey, just plead guilty. We'll let you go by with time served. So he was looking at 20 years, ended up serving, I think, 6 or something like that. So not bad for him.
Yeah. So there's a plane flying over Disney World with a Stingray device on it. And what were you doing?
Oh, I was riding the rides. I go down, dude. I was an idiot. Here, I give you an idea of what I used to do. All right. So when I was arrested, in my car, I had a 2005 Mini Cooper. In my car, I had, I think, $962 bills. So they go from there, and that was because that's what the strip club gave out as change. All right. So had all those $2 bills. Then they go to the house to search the house. In the kitchen cabinets, instead of dishes, I had prepaid debit cards. So they didn't know about the tax fraud back then. And they're sitting there going, what is this? And I'm like, I just like debit cards. So then they searched the bathroom. In the bathroom, I had like $10,000. In the guest bathroom, I had like $10,000 in 20s in one of the bathroom drawers. That's this idiot here. So when I go to Disney World, they had confiscated or seized a DVD collection that I had. And it was like a $30,000 DVD collection. All the Criterion editions and all that, because I'm a big film buff. I go and buy the thing again. Well, they seize it again. Not only that, but here I am. So I went from Las Vegas to Orlando, buy the year pass for both Universal and Disney World. Figure I needed to lay low at that point. Figured I'd lay low for a year, then I'd bug out to Brazil. So I rent a timeshare for 9 months straight, just paying cash, prepay for it. Go down to the furniture place, Modern Furniture, and I buy like 30 grand worth of furniture, buy 30 grand worth of electronics, and I'm just set up. I'm like, okay, I'll just play Xbox for a while. It lasted about 6 weeks. So, of course, when I'm arrested, they're looking at the TVs and everything else like that. And I remember to this day, in my arraignment, the Secret Service agent, his name was Bobby Kirby. He and I are friends now, but he's up there testifying during the arraignment about everything that they seized. And Bobby looks at me. He's like, "That's a really nice TV you got there, dude." And I'm like, "Yeah, thank you, Bobby." But I mean, I was a complete idiot, just a worthless human being at that point. Let's put it that way.
So, what made you change sides then? You said you went from being a criminal to working for the Secret Service. Was that just to get out of jail time that you went to the Secret Service?
Sure. So I guess backtrack a little bit, Chris. My first crimes were when I was 10 years old. I'm from Eastern Kentucky, and Eastern Kentucky is a very poor area. It's, I guess, 20, 30% real time unemployment. You're lucky to have a job. If you don't have one, you may be scamming, hustling, or on, government assistance, something like that. My mom was a criminal through and through. So the first crime I committed, my dad wasn't like that, but my dad became the enabler of the family. So he loved my mom so much, he was scared of losing her. So any idea she came up with, he would support. She finally leaves him, moves me and my sister. I was 10. My sister Denise was 9. Moves us back. We were in Panama City, Florida. Moves back to Hazard, Kentucky. And she used to go out and party with men all the time. And she kept up doing that and would leave me and Denise alone for, days at a time. And I remember I was a kid that was always scared she wasn't going to come back. And Denise was the kid who just got angry about it. Mm-hmm. So Denise is, we didn't have any food in the house. Mom had been gone for a few days. Denise walks in. She's got some pork chops in her hand. And I'm like, where'd you get that? And she was like, I stole them. And I'm like, show me how you did that. So she shows me how she's shoplifting. And I'm like, shit, yeah, let's do that. So we start stealing food, and the shopping center had a Kmart there. Well, clothes. We start taking clothes from Kmart, and then toys and video games and books and music and all that stuff. And mom starts to notice all the stolen loot. When you've got a brand new Intellivision or Atari 2600 sitting there, she starts noticing that. Where'd that come from? She says. And I'm like, oh, I found it. And she's like, no, you didn't find that. Denise never did lie. Denise stands up and she's like, we stole it. And my mom looks at my sister and she's like, show me how you did that. And she starts running me and Denise as these little shoplifters. And not only that, but she goes to get her mom as well. So it's grandmother, mom, me and Denise taking road trips, and they'll go to JCPenney's and steal clothes. And I'll go to the bookstore and steal books because I'm a big reader. That's the first crime I committed. And I don't want you to think that I'm really big on this. I don't want you to think that my childhood resulted in my crimes, because as an adult, you're responsible for your actions. So I chose to victimize people. But, my sister, she, other than shoplifting that one specific time, she doesn't break the law again. She goes off to be a great parent, teacher, just a great person overall. I was the guy who didn't stop. So in Eastern Kentucky, I guess it's the male mentality. You're expected to do whatever the family's doing. So I grew up committing crime, benefit fraud, charity fraud, insurance fraud, faking accidents, documents, everything else. So branch off on my own in the mid 90s, fake a car accident to get the money to get married, to move from Hazard to Lexington, Kentucky to go to UK for English and theater. That was my degree. And, I'm the guy that's always scared. I'm always, even today, I'm scared that the people who love me are going to leave me. Mm-hmm. So I was married at that time, and I told my wife, I was like, nah, I'll do the job. You don't worry about getting work. I'll get a job. You just worry about going to school. And then it was, well, I'll do the cooking and cleaning. So here I am doing everything. Got, 50-hour a week job, 18-hour class load, all the cooking, cleaning. Something had to give. What gave was the job. Well, I'm already a fraudster. So I got to make money. Didn't know how. My first cybercrime was eBay. Find eBay. Started trying to figure out how to make money on eBay. And then Bill O'Reilly was kind enough to have an episode on Beanie Babies. I'm watching that, and he's profiling Peanut the Royal Blue Elephant. Damn thing was selling for $1,500. And I was naive. I didn't understand this kind of stuff. So I was like, I'll go around to all, the Hallmark stores may have one. So I go around to all the shops the next day. They don't have one. I'm like, shit. But they did have these gray Beanie Baby elephants for $8. So I bought one of those, stopped by Kroger on the way home, picked up a pack of blue Rit dye, go home, try to dye the little guy. Find out pretty quickly, I guess I had failed home economics class at that point. Find out pretty quickly he's made out of polyester, doesn't hold dye very well, get him out of the bath, look like he's got the mange, this little ragged animal. And I'm like, well, got to do something. So I started researching mail fraud, and I was like, okay, so as long as you send the person something, you can argue they received it. It's your word against theirs. So I found a picture of a real one online, posted it on eBay. Woman won the bid. She thought I had the real thing. And that's where, when I was a kid, I became a really good social engineer. because I had to with the adults in my environment. You had to do it out of necessity to survive as an adult. And you see that time and time again with these online criminals is as children, they're forced to be social engineers. And then as adults, they choose to use that tool to commit crime. And that's what I did. So I sent her a message. I was like, hey, we've never done any business before. Don't know if I can even trust you. What I need you to do is go out and get a U.S. postal money order. Why? Because it protects both of us. It's issued by the U.S. government. Send that to me. Once I get that, I'll send the animal to you. Well, I knew she couldn't cancel a U.S. postal money order. So she sends that to me. I send her this little ragged creature, get a call from her, and she was like, this is not what I ordered. And my response was, lady, you ordered a blue elephant. I sent you a blue-ish elephant. And I keep putting her off. And that's really the first lesson that I learned about online crime is that if you keep putting a victim off, a lot of them, they get exasperated, they throw their hands in the air, walk away, and you don't hear from them. And none of them, even today, none of them complained to law enforcement about that. And that was very, it was unsophisticated. I did it under my name. But as I kept going, and I did keep going, as I kept going, I got better at the craft until finally, I was, it turns into pirated software. Pirated software leads into installing mod chips into systems. Mod chips led into programming satellite DSS cards. So I started doing that. About the same time I started doing that, a Canadian judge ruled that it was legal for Canadian citizens to pirate those satellite DSS signals. So his thing was, since RCA doesn't sell those 18-inch dishes up here, my citizens can pirate it. Well, leave it to the brilliance of legislators to open up a lot of crime. So that immediately in the United States, you go down to Best Buy, buy the system for $100, take it out in the parking lot, open the system up, take the card out, throw the system away, program the card, ship it to Canada, $500 a pop. Started doing that, making a lot of money. Got to the point that I had so many orders, I couldn't fill all the orders. Thought to myself, why do I need to fill any of them? They're in Canada. I'm down here. Who the hell are they going to complain to? So I didn't fill any of the orders, stole even more money, and got scared. I was making about $4,000 a week at that point and got scared of the money that was coming in. I figured that someone was going to look at me for money laundering. Figured the best thing that I could do is get a fake ID, open up a bank account under that, launder the money through that. No idea where to get one. So I get online. Idiot here gets online, looks around, think I find a guy. His name was Fake ID Man. Yeah.
Very reliable source.
Oh, very reliable, very reliable. Had reviews and everything, his reviews. So I sent him $200, sent him my picture. He rips me off, and man, do I get pissed off. I'm like, I don't like being a victim. So the result was Counterfeit Library, and Counterfeit Library led into Shadow Crew. That's the backstory of that. And then, the Secret Service. What turned me around? Got married. I was married for 9 years. Lied to my wife the entire 9. Took 3 years for her to find out that I was a criminal, which she should have known way before that. But the next 6 years were me telling her, I've quit. I'm going to quit just a little while longer. Then finally, you like spending the money, don't you? Why don't you keep quiet? And she found out I wasn't going to quit. So she leaves. And that fear I have of being abandoned all the time, that was my fault, but by God, it became real. So here I am. I was in Charleston, South Carolina, and got depressed. I mean, I was just walking around the house in a stupor and everything else, and getting suicidal. Reached out, called a psychologist. She took me in, and she was trying to get me to stop breaking the law, and she was trying to get me to go into real estate. And I remember it still. She's like, why don't you try real estate? And I'm like, is there a difference? And she was like, what? And I was like, just saying. But she did some good. I saw her for about 4 months. And what happened was one night, Brett Johnson, he gets lonely and horny. I was 34. I had not been to a strip club in my life. Walked into one. I didn't even start drinking until I was 34. So walked into a strip club. And I am that idiot that fell in love with the first stripper that he sees. Girl walks by. I'm like, whew, that's the one for me. So got engaged to her. got engaged to her, found out she's addicted to coke. Figure I could, I guess subconsciously, I figured if I could save her, I could save me. And I tell you that because what turns me around, my sister disowns me, not because of the crime, but because of the stripper. So that was the line in the sand right there. Shadow Crew made the front cover of Forbes. We get busted. Secret Service hires me. I work for them for about a year, then go on this cross-country crime spree. Denise hadn't talked to me the entire year, and that was the only family I had, was Denise at the time. I get arrested, get sent to prison, then escape. Get caught again. Denise still hasn't talked to me. After I get caught on the escape, my dad comes to visit. I was in a county jail in Lexington, Kentucky. He comes to visit. They've got a 10-minute visitation. He's like, son, can I do anything for you? I'm like, Dad, you can tell my sister I said I love her. He gets on the phone, calls Denise. She's pregnant in Hickory, North Carolina. He gets in the damn car and drives 7.5 hours to come see her dumbass brother for 10 minutes to tell me she loves me.
Wow.
And I don't see her again for about 5 years. And it took about 2.5 years behind the fence for me to really accept responsibility, for me to realize, because I had justified everything I'd done. I'd said, I did it for my wife, for my sister, for my stripper girlfriend. And it took about 2.5 years for me to realize that, no, Brett, the reason you're in prison is because you chose to break the law. It's nobody's fault but yours. And that's a tough pill to swallow, man. To realize that the reason your life is a wreck is nobody's fault but yours, mister. And not only that, but you hurt people that you didn't even know. I stole and lied to people that I'd never met, that I didn't know, family, friends, everything else. Got out in 2011. No taste of breaking the law whatsoever. And I was on probation. I was on 3 years probation, could not touch a computer. Had job offers from Deloitte, from KnowBe4, from a couple of payment processors. Couldn't take them because I wasn't allowed to touch a computer. So it got to the point where I was applying for fast food. Probation officer, no, that's a computer. And I'm like, okay, what about a waiter's position? He's like, no, that's a computer and credit cards, idiot. So couldn't get a job, and I couldn't get a job. I was bumming money from my dad and my sister. I had a roommate taking care of half the rent. I was on food stamps so I could eat. And they tell you when you leave prison, they tell you, hey, find something you care about and a job, and the chances of you recidivating are 0. So what I found that I cared about, I had a cat. And I got to the point I had enough money to feed the cat, and I didn't have enough money to buy toilet paper. So I went to the dollar store, bought the little guy some food. And on the way out, they had this kiosk that had toilet paper there. And that right there was the first crime I committed when I got out. I didn't want to go back online to do it. So I ended up shoplifting toilet paper. And about the same time I did that, my wife now, Michelle, she met me. I was dating the same type of women I had been dating. So she met me. We got together. I ended up moving in with her a couple months later. Finally got a job. The only job I could get was pushing a lawnmower. That's the only people that would hire me. This guy was running a business out of his house. And my job was pushing a lawnmower 10 hours a day, $400 a week. And, you can tell by looking at me right now, I'm not the manual labor type of guy. So I'd come in, pass out, wake up the next morning, shower, go at it again. But, I was doing something, dude. And I was happy at that point. I was. And, when it gets cold, the grass doesn't grow. So job ended. Michelle's the only one working. And I'm sitting there going, got to do something. Got to show her I'm worth it. Figured I could bring food in the house. So I get on the dark web, buy some stolen credit card details, start ordering food. And, the truth of the matter is you start ordering food, and it's like back when you're shoplifting as a kid. Food turns into clothes because I'm supplying food. And I'm like, well, I can get the boys some clothes. I can get Michelle some clothes. Well, we got Christmas coming up. Well, I get arrested. Of course I do. I get arrested on a food order. Michelle had no idea what I was doing. No idea. I'd lied to her the entire time. And get arrested, go back to prison for 10 months on a violation. At my sentencing on that violation, the only people that were there were the U.S. Marshals, the judge, the prosecutor, probation officer, me, and Michelle. And she stands up in front of the judge. And she's telling the judge that I'm a better dad to her kids than their actual father is. And I'm just sitting, I'm crying like a baby. I still go back to prison for 10 months. And that's when I find out that all that damn time, Michelle didn't need me for what I could give her. She just needed me for me. And I'd had that with my sister in relationships. I'd never had it with anybody else. So we get out of prison after 10 months. We get married shortly after that. They kill the probation. I start looking for any type of job. And they tell you, hey, at the very least, you can get a job at a car lot selling cars. Not Brett Johnson. It turns out when you're a cyber criminal, hell no. So I can't get a job. And I know what my triggers are. I know I'll go so far. So I looked at Michelle and I was like, let me see what I can do. I signed on to LinkedIn, reached out to a guy named Keith Malarski, FBI super cop. He was, this guy, he's been in the news. He's been in documentaries, everything else. He was involved with some of the rest that I was associated with. Reached out to him, sent him a message. I was like, hey, respect everything you did. By the way, I'd like to be legal. The guy took me under his wing. To this day, he gives me references, advice, everything else. So it started with that. Then it went to the head of the Identity Theft Council. He took me in under his wing, Neil O'Farrell. Microsoft comes in and hires. And today, I lead a completely blessed life. I don't think I deserve it. I really don't. But I work my ass off to try to justify the life that I have. I'm adamant about trying to not be remembered as the guy who stole everything. I'd like to be remembered as the guy who turned it around. And that's it.
Gotcha. So in turning it around, what are you doing now? Kind of I don't want to say necessarily to make amends, but
yeah,
what are you doing in your turning it around?
Well, the catchphrase, quote unquote, the catchphrase is, I try to protect people against the type of person that I used to be. All right. But I do a lot of consulting. I consult with Fortune 50, Fortune 500 companies, with financial institutions. Got a couple of podcasts. I've got the Anglerfish podcast. I had the Online Fraudcast, which was very successful. Getting ready to launch the Unethical Life. A couple other websites are getting ready to come up. I work with AARP. I'm basically their spokesperson right now. Work with AARP, work with consumer groups, with educational institutions, with law enforcement. I get to talk at Quantico twice a year right now to the CISO Academy over there. And I work hard every day. I really am adamant about trying to, you say make amends. And I don't think there's anything I could ever do to make up for the damage that I caused. But I do think that that it's important that every choice from this point on is a good choice instead of a bad choice. And, I'm blessed. I'm blessed that I was able to I've been granted the opportunity to help people instead of harm people. And by God, I'm not going back to that. So
well, that's good.
Turns out that once you've got a taste of doing things right and helping people, that's a pretty good taste.
That's awesome. So what do you tell people in terms of, I don't want you to become a victim of who I was? What do you tell people to do or watch out for?
Well, I do a lot of presentations, except for 2020 when COVID shuts down everything. I usually keynote, 50, 70 conferences a year. I talk to a lot of consumers as well. And the thing that people don't understand, people think that cyber criminals are these upper tier computer hackers able to break into anything, right? Like, gotcha. That's not the truth. I mean, we have, on the criminal side, you have these computer geniuses, but their numbers are really, really small. The 98, 99% of cyber criminals out there, they're just very good social engineers. Mm-hmm. They know how to manipulate someone using technology and psychology into giving up information, access, data, or cash. So you have to understand, first of all, that cybercrime is not rocket science. It's not complicated to defraud someone or a business. Mm-hmm. All right. Once you understand that, you also have to understand that, hey, everyone's information is available. This idea that some people have that what can we do to make sure our information isn't compromised? That ship has sailed. That's done. What was it last year? 1,500 breaches, 2.6 billion records compromised just last year. So that ship sailed.
That we know about.
That we know about. That's just reported.
that Troy Hunt has in his database.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. So the question then is, okay, if all of our information is available, what can we as people do to make sure that if a criminal has it, that he or she can't use it? And typically it's a he. So what can we do to make sure he can't use that information? And protecting yourself, again, is not rocket science. So you freeze your credit.
Mm-hmm.
Not only your credit, but you freeze the credit of every single person in the house. 25% kids, 25%, 1 in 4 children will be victims of identity theft. Synthetic fraud, tax fraud, medical fraud. That's where it hits kids. 25%. That's the number one victim group for identity theft. So freeze the credit of every single person in the house became free September 18th, 2018. All right, so that's number one. Understand that a credit freeze only stops all new account fraud. So all your existing credit cards, your bank accounts, everything else, a criminal can still access those and victimize you. So what you have to do is you have to monitor those accounts and place alerts on the existing accounts. For example, Discover Card has a $0 alert, meaning that if someone just buys your Discover Card information, pings it to see if the card's still active, you get that SMS text message saying, hey, some idiot's trying to hit you right now, and you can do something about it. The final thing, and it's that trifecta of security, the final thing is 80% of every single person on the planet uses the exact same password and login across multiple websites.
Mm-hmm.
Man, oh man. So, the answer is, can we get rid of passwords? Evidently, the answer to that one is no. So in the meantime, find yourself a password manager and start to use that thing. Because we as human beings, we're never taught what a secure password is. We think that we can be random. Human beings can never be random.
Yeah.
So find a password manager, let that take that job out of your hands and go like that. And the final thing that I say, I talk about scams a lot and things like that, but we have to understand what our place is in the criminal spectrum, because a criminal will victimize you depending on who you are and what you do. If I'm looking to defraud someone, the way that I will hit you is different if you work payroll, or if you're a CEO compared to if you're working food service for 20 years. I'll still victimize you, but the way that I'll do it differs. The same thing if you're a company or institution. I mean, do you have data that can be stolen and resold on the black market, or do you have data that your company has to have in order to operate? That will determine whether I steal it, sell it, or lock it down with ransomware. Mm-hmm. So understand your place in the cybercrime spectrum, design security around that. Okay?
So how do you deal with you talked about so much about social engineering, and as a kid, learning how to social engineer. What could people do to kind of be on the lookout for social engineering techniques?
Sure. So, there's so much interesting stuff going on that. All right. You have to kind of understand the way a scam works. And the reason a scam works is you start with a scammer and you start with the potential victim, and they're on opposite sides of the field. And the idea from a scamming point of view is to get that victim over on your side of things. Because if that victim doesn't trust you, you're not going to get cash or access or information or anything else like that. So what establishes trust these days? In a modern world, trust is established by tools, technology, and social engineering. So technology, we've got our cell phone. We tend to trust the information that comes across the cell phone. Scammers use spoof phone calls. They use proxy addresses to either spoof location. They use the spoofed phone numbers to spoof who they are. That establishes base levels of trust.
For the audience, can you clarify what a spoofed telephone number is and caller ID? You don't have to go into all the details of it, but just on a high level.
Okay. So when I pick up the phone and I call you, it will say Brett Johnson coming through from Birmingham, Alabama. I can change that phone call, and actually you don't even have to be technically proficient to do it. There are online services like Spoof Card or any number of services out there that will make the caller ID, instead of it showing the number you're calling from, it can make it look like you're calling from the Social Security Administration or the Sheriff's Office or the IRS or the hospital, any number of things like that. All right, that's a spoof phone call. A proxy address, think of your computer as having a home phone number. That home phone number is the IP address. A proxy allows you to spoof that home phone number of the computer, the IP address. So instead of it making it appear that it's in Birmingham like I am, I can use a proxy that makes it look like I'm in France or South America or California or wherever I want it to make it look like at that point. Okay, so that's the tools, and then finally, the tools and tech that lays a base level of trust. It's a social engineering. How good of a liar or a con man is the is the scammer to get someone to trust them? What type of story? And there are different ways you can social engineer someone, but typically what it is, it's establishing rapport, having some sort of conflict in there by, there's a problem, there's an issue, you're trying to scare the person, any number of things like that. So you see the phone calls with senior citizens come through, and it'll say, it'll come up saying Social Security Administration. So they pick up, they immediately think. So the way it works is, person looks at their phone, it says Social Security Administration. So they trust the tech, they trust the caller ID is correct. The scammer uses a tool, the spoof phone number, to say their Social Security Administration. So that's base level of trust on both of those. And then the social engineering pops in. Hi, this is James T. Lasky with the Social Security Administration. Look, we're going to have to shut down your number. Looks like there's been a lot of fraud committed on that. What we need you to do is go down there. We need you to pay a bond. Now, look, we don't take credit cards right now. We don't do that. No, don't hang up, because if you hang up, we've got a warrant right now for your arrest. They're en route to get you right now. So if you hang up, you may get put in jail and may have to spend a few days in there. And you don't want to do that because you know how prisons are. So what I need you to do is go down to Walmart, buy a Green Dot card, Green Dot prepaid card, load that up with $500. Stay on the phone with me while you're doing it. Once you get the information, just send me the card number. That way your bond will be covered at that point. Yes, it's completely legal. You see I am with the Social Security Administration. Now I'm going to tell you, you hang up, you get disconnected. Right there, you're going to jail. You don't want to do that. So you try to scare the person, you try to manipulate them. A lot of scams are the long cons, especially romance scams or something like that. It's about building rapport, befriending the person. Then it's the fear of loss. That's I want to see you, but I can't. I don't have the money, or my son's about to die. And I need the money for that. And you try to manipulate the victim into giving cash because the victim is desperate. It all boils down to instilling some degree of desperation in the victim or the potential victim, getting the victim to act out of a degree of desperation. So what I say is that you need to approach everything with a degree of objectivity, because when you're a victim, being objective goes out the window all of a sudden. That's the scammer's job, is to make sure you're not objectively thinking. So you need to take a breath, step back, and consider what's being told to you. It becomes problematic. So I also suggest that people try to find a buddy. I don't care if it's your worst enemy, but someone that you can run this stuff by. Does this sound right to you? Then that way you get that objective point of view. Also, never respond to any type of unsolicited request for anything, information, access, data, or cash. If someone's calling you, emailing you, knocking on your door, or snail mailing you, don't respond to that. But the problem is, Chris, we've got people like to trust. Mm-hmm. We as human beings, we want to believe the best in everyone. And a lot of people just don't realize that there are predators out there, and they will victimize you. So, I talk about Ronald Reagan a lot. Ronald Reagan said, trust but verify. I want people to trust each other, but I want you to verify every single thing that you possibly can. And that's where a site like What Is My IP comes in a lot of the time. It's one of these tools that can be used for verification.
Yep. Yeah, that's the thing that I always tell people is, as soon as someone is trying to trigger you emotionally, that has to be like the first and foremost, the biggest thing that you should worry about when someone is trying to get you upset, trying to scare you. Something's going to happen quickly if you don't do this.
To get you to act out of emotion instead of just reason, that's always the trigger right there.
Yeah. And it's funny because it's like I've talked to so many people, and even after the fact, they're like, yeah, I should have known, but in the moment, I just didn't think I was being emotional. Somehow in the moment, it seemed reasonable to pay with an iTunes gift card on my utility bill.
I'll tell you an even worse one, okay? What I've found, I've talked to a lot of victims over the past 4 years, all right? And time again, victims of scams at some point, most of them, the ones that I've actually talked to and interviewed, most of them really suspect that it's a scam, all right? But when I say we as a society and media, we tend to blame the victim. So someone gets a phishing email, and our response is, why would you be stupid enough to click on that link? Or someone sends money in a romance scam. Well, I would never send money to someone I don't know. Why are you that stupid? So we tend to blame the victim. What happens is because we're blaming the victim, even though they think it might be a scam, they're scared of being judged.
Yeah.
So they tend to alienate themselves from that support group they've had, family, friends, associates. They don't talk to those people because they're afraid those people are going to judge them. So all of a sudden, they've alienated themselves from their support group, and the only person they have to talk to is the scammer.
Yeah.
And the scammer is just going to continue to reinforce. And then it becomes a point of, at some point, you start to realize it is a scam. But you, as a person, you don't want to admit that. And you start thinking just a little more, just a little bit more. If I just stick with it just a little bit more, everything will work out all right. I've already given this much, just a little bit more. And the scammer, he's all about getting every single thing you've got. I've talked to people who have lost their homes. I talked to a lady who gave $1.1 million to a romance scammer. She got to the point she actually borrowed $200,000 from her father to pay this scammer. I've talked to people who, and it's not just the high dollar stuff like that. I talked to a lady, her son, that his mom was just on Social Security, and she lost her house, lost her retirement, everything else. Because at the end of the day, a scammer doesn't give a damn whether he's taking the last drop of food out of your mouth or anything else. It's just about him putting money in pocket.
Yeah. I think that's one of the hard things for people to understand is I think sometimes people think about it, well, they've got bills to pay or they're just trying to make ends meet. And I'm not convinced that it's always about that.
No, it's dude, I was a scammer, right? I was. And I will tell you that, okay, you may, as a scammer, you may tell yourself when you're starting out, oh, I'm just trying to pay the bills. But when you get better, you're stealing all kinds of money, and it's not about paying the bills. It's about not giving a damn about the victim and trying to justify that. And you're trying to steal as much as you possibly can, and you don't care about anybody else but yourself. That's the fact of the matter.
So actually, I have a question, because you said earlier before we started recording, ask me any question.
Any question.
And so I'll ask the question. At what point, as a scammer, do you make that transition of just not caring about people or not caring about the victim? Not that you were like, oh, I really care about this person, but I'm going to steal from them anyway. But at what point does like the person being a victim just kind of water under the bridge?
The answer to that lies into whether the scammer is a sociopath or not, right? And my answer to that is that most scammers are not. So if you look at it, and I'm fortunate enough that I've worked with the Certified Fraud Examiners Association. They've got this thing called the cybercrime triangle, or not the cybercrime triangle. They've got the fraud triangle, and one of the legs of that triangle is justifying. And that's the same thing with cyber criminals. Unless you're a sociopath, you have to convince yourself that you're a good person, that you're doing it for some reason. All right. So my convincing myself was I did it for my family. I did it for my sister, my wife, her stripper girlfriend. And you have to believe those justifications, because if you don't, it's pretty damn hard to look at yourself in the mirror, realizing, because at one point, and it wasn't even when I was at the beginning stages of being a criminal. At one point, there was a lady that she's selling a silver coin collection on eBay, single parent, selling it to put a roof on her house for her and her children. And I stole that from her and justified it. I'm doing it because I have to survive on my end. No, I'm doing it because I'm an asshole. All right. But a criminal has to justify that and believe the justification, because it really is the point of not being able to look at yourself in the mirror. So what I did was I compartmentalized everything. I said that online I'm a horrible person, and in the real world I'm a good person. I would give to homeless people. I would do all this other stuff. And you see this in the movies time and again. John Gotti giving out the Christmas turkeys, Frank Lucas and American Gangster giving out chair. That's bullshit. It's not because you're a good guy. It's because you're trying to justify your actions and convince yourself that you're a good guy. There's no beneficial thing about being a criminal. It's not about being a Robin Hood or anything else, or Jesse James. Jesse James was scum. I was scum. Everyone that victimizes or hurts somebody is scum, but you have to justify that.
Gotcha. So any parting advice to the audience before we wrap up?
Sure. Be vigilant. Be proactive. Too many times people are reactive in security or in their own security at home. It's not a point. If you're waiting to be victimized, I promise you it's going to come. The only reason you've not been victimized right now is there's so much information out there that it's like the worst lottery in the world. There's just not enough criminals to take advantage of it right now, but it's coming. So take a proactive response to security. Even if you're signing on to one of these identity theft protection services, or you've got all the malware, anti-malware in the world and everything else, be sure that you know exactly what's going on with your accounts and that you're proactive across the board. Don't wait for it, but be proactive, because there are predators out there looking for you. Do those three things that I mentioned: freezing credit, monitoring accounts, password manager. Be aware of the environment. Be aware of the sites you're going to. Oh, my God. If you've got kids in the house, what's the possibility of them downloading movies or music? It could happen. So, be aware of that. Other than that, just stay safe, stay vigilant, and don't live a life being scared of things. Mm-hmm. I think we can't be scared in our lives.
Gotcha. And if people want to find out more about you and follow you on social media, where can they find you?
Sure. You can find me on LinkedIn. That tends to be the channel for Brett Johnson. I raise a lot of hell and I bitch a lot on Twitter. I've had a Twitter account for like 4 years. Only found out recently that Twitter is the platform to complain about things. Who would have thought? So I found my Twitter purpose. I complain a lot. But anglerfish.com, ANGLERPHISH is my main website. You guys are welcome to go there. If you've got any, and I mean this, anyone that's got any problems, I will help you as much as I possibly can. All right. You can reach out to me. You can call me directly. The only reason I won't pick up is if I'm on stage, which during COVID I'm not. So you can call me directly. You can email me. I'll help you as much as I can to make sure you guys are safe. And Chris, I appreciate you talking to me tonight. I really do.
Brett, thank you so much for coming on.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Easy Prey podcast. If you like this episode, help support the podcast and our mission by leaving a review at easyprey.com/review. Notes and a transcript of this episode with Brett Johnson can be found at easyprey.com/37.